I got Vivi here to protect me against any nasty toughs that might come knocking. You protect me, Vivi? I was at university when I found out that beloved science fiction author Orson Scott Card was a massive and dangerous homophobe, and since then I haven't spent a single penny on any of his books or any films or video games associated with him. I don't want to financially support an author, even if they're already rich, even if my money won't change anything. I don't want to financially support an author or an artist whose personal beliefs and political clout I do not agree with. These people often are rich and therefore powerful in some capacity, and I don't want to give them money. All of this leads me into talking about the author of the Harry Potter franchise. Wherever you come down on the Harry Potter author is up to you. I know that there are people out there who have suddenly become Harry Potter fans because they are such nasty far-right toughs. They didn't care before, but suddenly they do. How mysterious. And then there are people like me who liked the franchise well enough and no longer wish to support it in any financial way. I'm lucky in that I didn't grow up reading the books, and so I don't have as much of a sentimental connection to them. But all the same, I enjoy watching the films. I've read half of the books. I've been to the studios. In February, I was in LA and I went to Universal Studios with some friends, and I had probably the best day of my life. And so things like this become quite complicated now. But also, are they complicated? Don't support TERFs. TERFs fucking suck. So, if you like Harry Potter, if you're a decent person and you love trans people, there are plenty of authors out there for you. And some of them might even have been authors that the Harry Potter writer borrowed some of her ideas from. Case in point number 1, Diana Wynne Jones. Most famously, she wrote Howl's Moving Castle and its sequel. Howl's Moving Castle was adapted by Hayao Miyazaki into one of Studio Ghibli's great movies. She's also written the Chrestomanci series. The Chrestomanci series is big. It's been going on for like 40 years. She started it in the 70s and she's still pretty much writing it. And so you kind of start with the first one, Charmed Life. It has a very, very Harry Potter feel to it. But what sets it apart from Harry Potter is the fact that its protagonists are a brother and sister pair who are very, very different people. And it has a Sherlock Watson relationship where the boy is the narrator, but the girl is kind of the protagonist. And the girl is also a bit of an asshole. She's very, very confident in her magic. She's very confident in her abilities and what the future might hold for her, even though she is recently orphaned and thus taken in by the powerful magician Chrestomanci. The series flits back and forth in time, and there are prequels and sequels that build upon his character and other characters in the story. And it's a huge rabbit hole to go down. These are very much children's books, but they do that thing where they straddle a line of being respectful to children's intelligence. I don't feel like the Harry Potter series does a great job of this. Diana Wynne Jones treats children like adults. She is willing to burden them with some emotional and ethical weight, and even though they are so accessible in terms of their language, they're still witty and clever, and they still have a lot of big themes going on. And the fact that their protagonist is a 10-year-old girl who's a bit of a dickhead is very enjoyable and very different for this kind of a children's book. Please read Diana Wynne Jones, please read Chrestomanci, and please read Howl's Moving Castle. Next book I want to recommend is Kikis Delivery Service. Now, Kikis Delivery Service is obviously, again, a Ghibli film, but it was originally a novel and the first in a series of novels by beloved Japanese children's author Eiko Kadono. Recently, the first novel in the series was retranslated and republished. The translator is a dear friend of mine, translator Emily Ballistrieri, and he did an incredible job with this translation. It is playful, it is witty, it is fun, and is full of vibrancy and life and excitement. And Kiki is more fleshed out and more human than even in the Ghibli adaptation, which of course is a wonderful, wonderful film. This is a great place to begin before reading Harry Potter. If you have a child who is a little bit younger than the Harry Potter reading age, maybe they are 6 years old and they're not quite ready for Harry Potter, then they should read Kiki. Of course, now they should read it instead of Harry Potter. You should buy it instead of Harry Potter. Support literature in translation, support Japanese literature, support our translators, support Emily Balistrieri. He's an incredible translator. So Kikis delivery service is full of a lot more vibrancy and charm and lightheartedness than the Harry Potter series, and it begins with Kiki, who is a witch, her mother was a witch, and Kiki must set out on her own to find a town that is in need of a witch. So she flies off from home, and she lands in this town, and the town doesn't immediately take to her. She gets up to a lot of mischief and naughty things. She creates problems that she then has to solve rather than just solving them, and it's a lot of charming and sweet fun. It's a colourful novel full of vibrancy and sweetness, and the new cover is also absolutely gorgeous. So read Kiki. Now, the Harry Potter author has been revered as a feminist for a long time, but do you know who's a really great feminist writer? Was Ursula Le Guin. Ursula Le Guin was an incredible force in the fantasy and science fiction genres, writing books that were accessible to children and adults, to the point that it's hard to tell who they were actually written for in the first place. They are human novels for humans. And the Earthsea books, beginning with A Wizard of Earthsea, are fantastic replacements for the Harry Potter series. Once again, obviously enormous inspirations for, and because I am nothing but a Harry Potter cynic these days, arguably things that were just ripped from. So A Wizard of Earthsea is a very familiar story. It is that of a boy on an island, and his island is invaded, and so he uses intense magical powers to save the island from the invaders. He is then whisked away by a Yoda figure to be trained as a powerful wizard, and then comes into his own as a Wizard of Earthsea, which in itself is a fantastically well-realised fantasy world. Everyone should read Ursula Le Guin. Most people have read Ursula Le Guin. If you haven't, please read Wizard of Earthsea. Alright, the next one is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart, and that is Little Witch Academia. I will confess right up that so many things I've mentioned are either Japanese or adapted into Japanese films or TV shows, and this is another one. Little Witch Academia is a manga that also exists as an anime, and I'm pretty sure they came about at the same time, or at least the manga might have even come after the anime. I can't remember, but the anime is made by Studio Trigger, who are always a lot of fun, and the anime is absolutely beautiful. If you watch it with the English dub is also great. So, Little Witch Academia is written by Yo Yoshinari, and the art is by Keisuke Sato. And these are gorgeous manga. The anime is absolutely beautiful. Read it or watch it, I don't mind, but it is perfect for people who love the Harry Potter franchise and want something else to replace it. Little Witch Academia definitely plays off the Harry Potter series a little bit. It uses a lot of tropes and ideas and kind of twists them into more fun things. It feels very similar to a lot of these exciting young Western cartoons that have been coming up the last few years, like Steven Universe and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and Gravity Falls, these kinds of series, where they're playful and interesting and they kind of touch on more adult themes, but in a really fun and witty kind of a way. Like there's an episode of Little Witch Academia with this group of dragons who are invading, and the dragons turn out to be a kind of, if I remember rightly, a big government of their own, and they're more intelligent than the kids thought that they were. Anyway, you've got your Hogwarts, you've got your group of kids, you've got your witches, and you've got a lot of monster of the week kind of situations where every episode they have to deal with something new that is excitingly, inventively magical and strange. And they really do play on that wit. They have a kind of Lemony Snicket wit and playfulness about them that is colourful and vibrant and beautiful and sometimes a little dark, but never anything that a child couldn't handle. Now, when it comes to kids' books that are like Harry Potter, my number one recommendation is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. That is Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. This trilogy was my childhood. This was my Harry Potter, and I recommend it to anyone and everyone. Obviously, you've got the BBC adaptation, which is doing a really, really good job, better than the film, although I actually think the Golden Compass film was quite a lot of fun. Anyway, if you haven't read these books, do so. They are set in an alternate Oxford, which is kind of steampunky, and they have little differences like how electric lights are called ambaric lights, but they also have big differences like the gypsy-inspired Egyptian people, or the fact that there are actual witches, and the most important fact that people have demons, and your demon is a part of your soul, your spirit, that exists outside of you in the form of an animal. When you finish puberty, I think it is, your animal becomes stuck in a certain form, and that form usually reflects your personality in some way, like people who work in servitude have dogs, that kind of thing. The series pulls apart organized religion. This is the big subtext, I guess, of the whole series, and it is something that has been controversial since the books came out in the early 90s and remains so to this day. You know, they were banned books in some places, but they are intensely intelligent books for that reason and many others. The number one reason, even more than its allegories, is Lyra herself, our protagonist. When I read these books, I was about 13, 14. I was Lyra's age, and she was the first girl that I actually fell in love with. I still love this girl. She feels like she was my first childhood crush. She meant the whole world to me, and the story that she went on, the lessons that she learned were my lessons. And so, yeah, this was very much my Harry Potter, and it should be yours. Now, in terms of Harry Potter books, but for adults, The Night Circus. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern is a wonderfully witty and clever and fun and frantic and exciting alternate history, pseudo-gothic, urban fantasy kind of a novel about two wizards who have spent their entire lives in a kind of fun game, chess match, battle of wits between each other, and each of them at the beginning of the novel takes a ward, and these wards become our two protagonists, and these two wards don't realize that they're basically being trained to engage in this giant chess battle between two wizards who have nothing better to do with their time. The Night Circus itself, one of the wards, I can't remember her name, the girl one, she lives in this circus with her father, Prospero, I think his name's Prospero. And this circus is a magical place that appears at nightfall and disappears by dawn in different cities, and it moves around the world. And when you go inside the circus, it's a big TARDIS-y place full of impossible things. So it's a very, very exciting magical story, and probably one of my favourite novels ever in terms of how enjoyable it is to read. I think most people who grew up with the Harry Potter books probably have also read Neil Gaiman, but just in case, you should read Neverwhere. Neverwhere has a very urban fantasy, alternate reality kind of a spin to it. It's perfect for people who love his dark materials. It's perfect for people who love the Night Circus that I just mentioned. Neverwhere tells the story of the London below, this strange, impossible place, which I think was inspired by the mind the gap thing that they say on the tube, and through that gap fall things. It's a weird way to say that. Things fall through the gap, and the things that fall through the gap are the impossible things, the strange things, the forgotten things, the worthless things, the magical things. And the London below is an impossible place full of impossible people who's kind of been forgotten by life, and they've created an entire magical, impossible city beneath London. And our protagonist is an unwitting and almost witless Scottish man who arrives in London. He's drawn into London below by this girl whose name is Dor, and this guiding figure called the Marquis de Carabas. It might actually be pronounced Marquis de Carabas, because I recently found out that in the UK we say Marquis as Marquis. Maybe they're not even the same thing. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know, but read Neverwhere. Okay, another one is The Name of the Wind. The Name of the Wind is probably the biggest fantasy book in the last 10 years, although I think it's been out for longer than that now. Patrick Rothfuss was supposed to have recreated the world of fantasy when he brought out Name of the Wind. That's what people were saying, that this was a step towards a higher form of fantasy. And I actually agreed with that when I first read it, and I kind of still do, even though it's the popular thing to say. The Name of the Wind really is that good. It's an enormous, like 800-page fantasy novel. It has a sequel. We're waiting for the third one. It probably won't come out. But it's about a boy called Kvothe, He's part of a traveling band of people who are attacked by an army of demon monsters, and then he ends up at a university, and most of the book is set at this university where Kvothe, never said it out loud before, studies, and he studies magic, and and the magic system is kind of almost a physics, chemistry kind of a thing. It's a really great magic system. If you love the Harry Potter books because they're set in Hogwarts, and Hogwarts itself is such a wonderful setting, full of impossible magical things, and every time you go into a classroom or turn a corner or go out into the forest, you never know what wonderful, exciting people and things you're going to see. The university, In the Name of the Wind, does exactly the same thing. So read that instead. Now, I didn't want to fill this video up with lectures and aggression and anger, etc. But, you know, if I'm gonna preach at you for a second politically, if you do choose to keep spending money on Harry Potter related stuff, could you at least balance that by donating to mermaids or any other trans related charities? Can you help trans people as best you can? It's really important. It's important to me, it's important to them, it's important to the world. Just be decent.